9. Phoenix shipwreck. 47 Chinese tourists, including 13 children, tragically perished one July afternoon in 2018 when the diving boat they were on capsized off the waters of Phuket, Thailand. The vessel, called the Phoenix, was on its way back to the coast after a snorkeling trip with 101 passengers aboard. There was a storm warning in effect for later that day, but it's unclear whether the captain knew about it. Maybe the captain knew about it and ignored it. Before the Phoenix could reach dry land, it encountered thrashing waves measuring at least 10 feet 3 meters tall. The boat should have been able to handle these uncomfortable conditions, but it had major construction and design flaws that caused it to sink. One problem was loose concrete blocks were being used as ballast. When the boat began swaying, they slid from side to side in the bilge, making the listing even worse. There was also only one watertight door on the vessel when there should have been 4. The windows smashed against the impact of the pounding waves because they weren't as durable as they were supposed to be. The authorities were unaware of these issues. They made these discoveries months after the wreck when they raised the Phoenix from 137 feet, 42 meters beneath the waves. Thai officials blamed the boat's Chinese owners for its non-compliance with the law, even though the government had inspected and approved it for commercial use. To add insult to injury, the owners auctioned the wreck off, which many saw as disrespectful to the victims of the tragedy. 8. Rare Roman amphorae. In early 2021, archaeologists announced the discovery of a rare Roman shipwreck off the Greek island of Kassos. Along a major maritime trade route between Crete and Carpathos, Kassos is the southernmost island in the Aegean Sea. It was once home to populations from Minoan and Mycenaean cultures. Dating back to sometime between 200 and 300 AD, crews loaded the sunken vessel with ceramic amphorae, a tall ancient Greek or Roman jar with 2 handles and a narrow neck. They were once likely filled with oil, according to the Greek Ministry of Culture and Sports. The ongoing Kassos Maritime Archaeological Project made the discovery. They've spent the last 4 years focusing on finding, recording, salvaging, and studying submerged artifacts around the island. A team of nearly 24 scientists and technicians conducted over 100 dives throughout their investigation of the ancient wreck. The team logged over 200 hours of diving time. Besides the Roman ship, the team identified 3 other wrecks, including one laden with Hellenistic-era amphorae dating back to the 1st century BC. They dated another, even older shipwreck back to the 5th century BC, while the third vessel's from modern times. 7. Long-lost beer ingredients. During the 1980s, an amateur diver named Steve Hickman encountered a sunken ship, the Wallachia, off the Scottish coast. It had collided with another vessel and capsized back in 1895 right after departing from Glasgow. Crews fully loaded the ship with cargo, including thousands of bottles of different kinds of alcohol. The cold water helped to preserve the booze, while it sat on the seafloor for over a century before Hickman found it. After discovering the wreck, he returned to it periodically to retrieve whiskey, gin, and beer, collecting dozens of bottles over the years. A team accompanied Hickman during one of his drives to the Wallachia last year and collected a few bottles. They handed them over to scientists at Brewlab, a company that specializes in beer quality. The team found live yeast in 3 bottles of beer, and they used it to try replicating the original recipe. Throughout the process, they discovered that the beer contained a long-lost yeast strain that's no longer used today. At the last update, they were looking into whether it could be useful for improving modern brewing. 6. HMS Pandora wreck. The British launched the Royal Navy ship HMS Pandora in 1779. It became famous for hunting down and capturing 14 mutineers in the South Pacific who'd seized control of another British Royal Navy vessel called the HMS Bounty. Shortly into its return voyage to Europe in 1791, the Pandora ran aground on the outer Great Barrier Reef. It sank the following morning, killing 31 crew members and 4 of the captured mutineers. Colonial officials in New South Wales, Australia, didn't bother trying to salvage the wreck. A trio of explorers rediscovered the long-lost Pandora in 1977. The ship quickly became known as one of the most significant shipwrecks ever found in the Southern Hemisphere. Marine archaeologists from the Queensland Museum carried out several excavations between 1983 and 1999. They recovered the skeletal remains of several crew members and fancy shoe buckles, buttons, wax seals, and a one-of-a-kind 18th century stamp belonging to the ship's first lieutenant, John Larkin. The team only explored a portion of the wreck. Much of the vessel remains buried in what archaeologist Peter Gesner described as a marine Pompeii. But raising the Pandora would be a time-consuming and costly endeavor. The price of recovering the copper-sheathed hull alone was estimated at around $60 million in 1998. It would undoubtedly cost a lot more now. So, it's unlikely that anyone will ever bring the entire wreck to the surface. Nobody knows if there are plans to continue excavating it. 5. The Maid of Harlech. In 2007, a family of beachgoers spotted a World War II-era American fighter plane poking out from the sand and water along the coast in North Wales. Nicknamed the Maid of Harlech, it was the long-forgotten plane's third appearance in 65 years. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning aircraft was being piloted by 24-year-old Second Lieutenant Robert F. Elliott when it crashed on September 27, 1942. Its left engine lost power less than an hour into Elliott's flight. When he attempted an emergency landing, the right engine also malfunctioned, and the plane landed in 2 feet 61 centimeters of water. Elliott survived, but investigators accused him of being careless and blamed him for the crash. The case received little publicity, and the UK's beaches were closed to the public for obvious safety reasons. Meanwhile, the military banned the press from discussing any rumored Allied disasters. There's no evidence that any visitors encountered the wreck after the beaches reopened, and the authorities have always kept its location quiet to prevent people from disturbing it. While the aircraft's guns have been removed, it still carries its fuel load. Nobody ever saw the Maid of Harlech again until the 1970s, when it became partially uncovered from the 6.5-foot 2 meters of sand that normally covers it. This happened again in 2007 when a family of beachgoers stumbled upon the plane, and again in 2014. If you're hoping to glimpse firsthand this World War II relic, good luck finding it. You'd need perfect timing with shifting sands and waters, and its location remains a closely guarded secret. During the Maid of Harlech's most recent 120-day appearance, local aviation historian Matt Rimmer remained on guard to make sure that nobody interfered with it. Have you ever tried to get a peek at something you weren't supposed to? Share your experience in the comments. Be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't yet. 4. Apollo 11 rocket engines. Apollo 11 is the famous space mission that put men on the moon for the first time. When it launched on July 16, 1969, it deposited its Saturn VF-1 rockets into the Atlantic Ocean. They remained there until a team from Bezos Expeditions, an exploration company owned by Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, found them. After locating the rockets 14,000 feet, 4,267 meters beneath the waves using deep-sea sonar, the team inspected them using remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. They encountered a tangled, time-worn mess of parts strewn across the seafloor. But there was only one way to tell how intact the engines were, and if they were from Apollo 11. It would be by removing them from the water and performing in-depth analysis. This was easier said than done. As Bezos pointed out in a statement, the parts slammed into the water at high velocity and had sat in salt water for 40 years before the team recovered them. But he also acknowledged that manufacturers made the rockets of durable materials and seemed hopeful about the prospect of identifying their origins. In early 2013, Bezos Expeditions raised a collection of parts including 2 of the engines. NASA launched the 67 Saturn VF-1 rockets between 1967 and 1973, so the team's next task was to verify whether the ones they brought to the surface were actually from Apollo 11. They confirmed this several months later via the part's extremely worn and barely detectable serial number. 3. Black Swan Project. In 2007, a company called Odyssey Marine Exploration privately flew $500 million worth of treasure from Gibraltar to its headquarters in Tampa, Florida. Company officials refused to reveal the origins of the cryptic hoard, which included 17 tons of mostly silver coins. Altogether, the trove contained well over 500,000 pieces. The company admitted that the coins mostly came from a single shipwreck, but that there were coins from other wrecks thrown into the mix. Most of the coins are likely uncirculated, according to rare coin expert Nick Bruyer, who examined several thousand of the pieces. It was later revealed that Odyssey filed legal paperwork for rights to salvage the wreck of a Spanish warship called the Nuestra Señora de las Mercedes. The ship sank off the Portuguese coast during a battle in 1804. The Spanish government claimed ownership of the sunken vessel and fought the case. Because they minted some coins in Lima, the Peruvian government also claimed dibs on the treasure. The court ultimately ruled that the hoard rightfully belongs to Spain. Courts ordered Odyssey to turn it over to the Spanish government and to pay over $1 million for what they called bad faith and abusive litigation. Subsequent dives, led by Cartagena's National Museum of Underwater Archaeology, which is managed by Spain's Culture Ministry, began in 2014. The first of the 3 expeditions so far yielded thousands of artifacts as researchers ventured into the heart of the ship. The find included anchors, iron and bronze cannon, copper and tin ingots, a silver dinner service and cutlery, silver candlesticks, a gold pestle, and others, according to a report from the University of Warsaw. The treasures show what early 19th century life was like, making their scientific and historic value immeasurable. Researchers believe the ship sank before Spain joined France in the Napoleonic Wars against Britain, which started after the breakdown of the 1802 Treaty of Amiens between France and Britain. 2. Foreign surveillance drone. While working in the Yellow Sea just north of Shanghai last year, a fisherman felt a powerful pull on his net. He hauled it in, thinking he'd just caught a large amount of fish, only to discover that he'd snagged a strangely shaped black device measuring about 10 feet long. It somewhat resembled a surfboard, and was equipped with 10 horizontal fins and an array of antennas and solar panels. Unsure of what the object was, the man turned it over to the local authorities. Photos show that it looks a lot like a wave glider, a reconnaissance drone used by several militaries, including the US Navy and the British Royal Navy. The discovery is both strange and alarming, since militaries sometimes use these devices for obtaining oceanographic data for submarine and anti-submarine warfare. This is according to military commentator Song Zongping. Speaking with the South China Morning Post, he described the surveillance drone as a great threat to China's national security. But China is evidently just as guilty of using this type of equipment to monitor other countries. In late 2020, an autonomous underwater vehicle, or AUV, resembling the Chinese-built Sea-Wing glider, was found in Indonesian waters off Selayar Island. Nobody came forward to claim ownership of it. It may surprise you to learn that the discovery of unclaimed surveillance devices is a somewhat frequent occurrence, or it's at least not as unusual as you might think. For example, in October 2020, Her Majesty's Coast Guard, HMCG, collected a device much like the wave glider on the UK's Isle of Tiree. Of course, no government owned up to being responsible for it. 1. Granite Head of Caesarion. Better known by his nickname Caesarion, Ptolemy XV Caesar was the last pharaoh of Egypt's Ptolemaic dynasty and Cleopatra's illegitimate son with Julius Caesar. He reigned alongside his mother, who groomed him as her planned successor until she took her own life in 30 BC. Caesarion continued ruling on his own for a short time, until the Roman Emperor Octavian had him executed. Someone supposedly strangled him, although many historians have called the exact circumstances of his death into question. There are very few surviving images of Caesarion. One of these rare depictions came as an enormous granite head that was raised from the harbor of Alexandria in 1997. Dating back to the 1st century BC, researchers found it in a section of the ancient city that was submerged by earthquakes and tidal waves. The head was likely once part of a full-bodied statue of the ruler. Researchers have also found many other fascinating treasures among Alexandria's underwater ruins, including the marble head of the Roman princess Antonia Minor, a sphinx, several shipwrecks, and more. Which of these things rescued from the ocean was most interesting to you? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon for another amazing video.